In N. The chat is about government and democracy of representation. In N. Asians. The power of a government varies depending how free it is from limitations and restraints. Types of governments. Aristotle of ancient GRECE about 400 BC distinguished three types of princes and kings: a monarchy, aristocracy, and democracy. Today, most governments derive legitimacy from a national constitution that provide legal framework of how power is exercised and controlled. In N.
Chippie and I talked about early nations and beginnings of democracy, specifically representative government. More modern governments have democracies. Chippie talks about government. The chat is about government, democracy, and nations. I am very interested in government. Chippie says, I am very interested in government, Middle East history, censorship, Europe, and Israel. I'm sort of interested in political parties, Switzerland, taxation, and Canada. I don't know where he came up with those things, but they're part of his, thinking patterns. Constitutional government. Today, most governments derive their legitimacy from national constitutions, provides legal framework for their rule, and specify how power is to be exercised and controlled. Even one-party states, as in past years, the communist bloc countries of Eastern Europe, Cuba, and certain other nations in Africa, Asia, and South America have documents, constitutions for their rules, for the structure of their government. They must not be only a paper facade. Oh, I, Chippie, like doing this chat. Smile. Must not be a paper facade. In order to understand how the country is governed, must examine the actual political process. Democracy. Representative government in the modern world is based not only on constitution that provides for it, but on the actual rule of law. The assurance that provisions of that constitution will be enforced. Requires that citizens be free to organize competing political parties, engage in political campaigns, and hold elections according to agreed upon rules. Democratic governments vary in structure. 2. I, Chippie, really like talking to you. Smile. To you. Smile. democratic governments vary in structure. Two common forms are parliamentary and presidential. The parliamentary form of government, as in Australia, Britain, Canada, or India, all political power is concentrated in the parliament or legislature. The prime minister or premier and um, officers of the cabinet are members of the parliament. They continue in office only as long as parliament supports or has confidence in their policies. In the presidential form of government, as in France and the United States, the voters elect, usually elect the president or leader, or have electoral systems. Also elect their representatives for the legislature. It's important to note that the executive, presidential powers in France, United States, and other countries have restrictions and controls on how far their power goes. Um, in countries with a relatively homogeneous population with a common tradition, language, and sense of national history, the central governments may not be federal but unitary. That is, they may retain most of the administrative power at the center, as in France. Loosely allied autonomous states sometimes join together to create a type of central government known as a confederation, in which the central government exists only at the pleasure of the sovereign members. Federal systems. The United States and India, with their state, constitutions designate many powers and responsibilities to subnational units, such as states or provinces. Even though the constitutions delegate many powers, in certain prescribed policy areas, a state government may have a high degree of autonomy. The United States, for example, state legislatures pass laws having to do with state affairs. State administrators carry them out, and state judiciaries interpret them. Federal systems also include autonomous local governments, such as county government and municipal government. In cities, boroughs, townships, and villages, local governments stand in a relationship to their education or sanitation and have their own elected officials. The layers of government in the federal system may not be clearly defined in practice. Often the different levels compete for control or functions and programs. In the United States and other countries, the tendency over the years has been for the national government to become much more involved in areas that once were the exclusive domain of state or regional governments. In addition, this distribution of authority become even more complex and varied with the rise of large metropolitan areas, megapolis, and the corresponding new local governmental organizations such as the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. I realize these are older institutions, but this is an older reference. In the former USSR, similar things have gone on. I, Chippy, really like talking. Smile to you. Smile. Often the different levels compete for control of functions and programs. The United States and other countries, the tendency over the years has been for the national government to become much more involved in areas that once were the exclusive domain of state or regional governments. In addition to distribution of authority, well, that's the end of that discussion. Um, Chippy has done some logical thinking or contemplation or computation on some of his conversation. Logically speaking, agriculture and conservation suggests government. Coalition and party and government suggest authority. Learning and students and conservation suggest government. I am Chippy, an AI personality. There are 181 ideas and 764 words in his database, in his logical database. Enter word to be examined or by. This is a word to be looked at in more detail for possible access or further logical checking. In this case, I put in because authority was mentioned a lot in terms of government. I mentioned authority, and Chippy found relevant articles in government, Protestantism, the Europe, history of Russia, history of government regulation, and Latin America, history of. That's my discussion with Chippy today of government and of democratic government. Previously, when I talked about Confucianism, the emperor in Confucianism, who was in charge of the government, was inspired by heavenly law to do the things he did, and was considered all knowledgeable and powerful, and was designated by the power of heaven, Li, to designate sages to lead the country, but now we have a better system. Well, that's the chat for today from Peacenik Channel. Thank you so much. Bye. I'm Carol Young.